The events take place in 1905 in Cork, Ireland. Percy Fawcett, a British military man, participates in a deer hunting competition with fellow soldiers. He takes first place in the competition, and this draws people's attention. That evening, Percy and his spouse attend a celebration honoring the hunting competition. Multiple soldiers of equal standing attend. Despite Percy's abilities, he stands alone without any service decorations. Several guests at the celebration pity him. They whisper about how Percy performs well as a soldier, but his family carries a poor name. His father has a reputation for alcohol abuse and betting, which has caused others to disrespect them. I find it fascinating how social standing mattered more than real skill back then. Maybe Percy's whole quest also serves as a way to escape his family's disgrace. He's been quite unlucky with his bloodline. In March 1906, Percy prepares to travel to London. He has received a summons from the Royal Geographical Society. Upon arrival, he encounters Sir George Goldie, a prominent figure in the organization. Percy has learned that Sir George has deployed people on significant expeditions across the globe. Sir George informs Percy that only a limited portion of Bolivia has been charted. The Amazon region remains largely unexplored. The territory contains rubber trees that generate substantial profits. However, Bolivia and Brazil now dispute the boundary locations, and both nations want British assistance before conflict erupts. Sir George presents Percy with the assignment of charting these unexplored regions. Percy initially requests a more renowned expedition, wanting to establish his reputation quickly. I can't help but notice Percy's drive showing through here. There's a craving for recognition that appears to push him past reason sometimes, but Sir George explains this isn't an ordinary charting assignment. The region presents dangers with extreme conditions, fatal diseases, and tribes that could be hostile. If Percy accomplishes this, it will earn him great honor. When Percy returns home, he informs his spouse about the proposal. She encourages him because she understands Percy does this to better their circumstances. He'll not recognize you upon your return, but you must leave. I understand that. In April 1906, Percy began his voyage to the Amazon. On the vessel, he encounters Henrietson, who should be assisting him. Percy feels irritated because they have been sailing together for 7 days but haven't spoken meaningfully. Henrietson explains he was observing Percy to determine if he was truly prepared for the difficult assignment ahead. Percy tells him that this expedition matters greatly for his standing and prospects. This confession seemed to me both truthful and sad. Percy isn't concealing the fact that this matters as much personally as professionally. My standing as a man depends entirely on our achievement. Later they get updated instructions to chart the Ver River, which forms part of the territory Bolivia and Brazil dispute. This river passes through dense jungles and they will begin their work from a location called Fenda Jacobina near a rubber estate. By July 1906, Percy and his group arrived in eastern Bolivia, a location that has never been charted previously. They visit the Fenda Jacobina Opera House where they encounter a young military man named Manley. Manley delivers them a communication from the Boundary Commission instructing them to abandon the expedition because of the conflict risks, but Percy declines to quit. He tells Manley to relay a response saying they will proceed. Percy also instructs Manley to locate native escorts. This instance hints at a central concept in the narrative. Percy's reliance on those he undervalues, particularly the natives and their wisdom. Manley explains the sole method to obtain an escort is to purchase an Indian laborer from a man called Baron who controls the estate. Baron's workers caution them that nobody has ever returned alive from the jungle. Ain't nobody comes back from up there. The following day, they begin a voyage with large rafts and animals. Along the route, they spot a German vessel, but before they can communicate, they come under attack by native fighters. One of Percy's crew gets struck by an arrow and drops into the water. Percy and others dive into the water to flee, but the water teems with piranhas. After getting caught in a net. Even following this, they press on. They halt at a secure location to rest. Manley becomes very ill, spitting up blood while C's hand becomes severely infected. Percy questions the escort about the remaining distance. The escort says it will require more weeks. The escort also shares them tales of the location, describing it as dangerous, but containing gold and rubber. He mentions an ancient settlement deep in the wilderness, older than England, but only mentioned in native legends. Percy doesn't trust him. I wonder if Percy's doubt here protects against disappointment. Perhaps he worries that trusting in legends will make him look ridiculous like the adventurers before him. That evening, Percy requests Sin to read a message from his spouse because he feels too scared to read it alone. The message says his spouse and children relocated to Devon and that she delivered a baby boy named Brian. Percy feels remorseful for abandoning them and destroys the message. They proceed with their voyage, but their provisions run out and one man begins losing his sanity from starvation. They aren't certain they will make it. It's too close. After numerous difficult weeks, they finally arrive at the upper section of the water, a location no white adventurer has visited previously. Their escort flees, but they anticipate this since his responsibility was only to transport them there. They venture deeper into the wilderness and kill a wild pig, which becomes their sole sustenance for the return journey. During the voyage, Percy discovers shattered ceramics. He begins considering the escort's tales might be accurate. It becomes obvious that even though the region is unfamiliar to them, people have inhabited there long previously. Percy begins trusting an ancient settlement might truly exist. I feel this represents the real transformation. Percy shifts from adventurer to believer, and from here his quest becomes more intimate and meaningful. After completing their assignment of charting the water, they go back home. Percy receives a hero's welcome and gets called the bravest adventurer of his era. Forces, you are England's bravest adventurer. Later, Percy encounters James Murray, a scientist and adventurer. Murray has studied Percy's writings about the labor trade. Percy tells him that the Amazon tribes deserve respect and safeguarding. Murray proposes they return to locate the vanished settlement instead of just charting boundaries. Murray's proposal complicates matters. I find it contradictory that the man who later becomes Percy's heaviest weight also reignites the search for Z. He explains they should keep this objective private for now as it could help safeguard the tribes. In February 1911, Percy presents his findings to an audience. He states the Amazon isn't merely a vast jungle, but conceals a vanished civilization that could be the forebears of current tribes, but the audience is stunned. That Amazonia contains a hidden civilization. Many believe Percy chases ancient legends that caused many adventurers to perish. But Percy maintains that if they locate the vanished settlement, it will transform human knowledge. To prove his assertion, Percy displays the ceramic fragments and mentions an ancient manuscript his spouse discovered at Trinity College. It was created by a Portuguese military man in 1753 and describes a vanished settlement, which Percy now names the vanished settlement of Z. Many audience members ridicule Percy's theories. Murray dares him to return and demonstrate it. And Percy accepts. I say we leave, and as I accept that dare. Percy's choice upsets his spouse. She desires to accompany him, stating she has studied navigation and the region's background. But Percy tells her the quest is too perilous and reminds her they have offspring. It's not a location at all for a woman. In May 1912, Percy, Sin, Manley, Murray, and others begin a fresh voyage. Murray quickly becomes exhausted and protests his pack weighs too much, discarding items he considers unnecessary. Later, they come under attack by native tribes inhabiting deep in the jungle. It marks Percy's initial experience facing such an assault. He instructs his crew not to retaliate. To pacify the attackers, Percy performs Soldiers of the Queen, and Manley provides music. We're soldiers of the CRE. Gradually, the tribe settles down and Percy cautiously moves toward them. Once the tribe recognizes they intend no danger, Percy summons his group to approach. The tribe's leader accepts them and permits them to remain as visitors. But when Murray learns this tribe practices cannibalism, he refuses to remain and departs the party. Percy and the others remain and gain knowledge from the tribe. Percy speaks to the leader about the vanished settlement. The leader says he only knows legends but cannot confirm if it's real. He advises them to proceed up water where they could encounter others with more information. The tribe demonstrates how they catch fish and cultivate without damaging the environment. Percy feels embarrassed. He understands that even though contemporary people view these tribes as backward, they exist in harmony with their surroundings and possess abilities outsiders don't comprehend. The so-called barbarians have nurtured the wilderness. The quest advances and the party discovers Murray, who is frail and resting in the jungle. He has devoured all of their leftover provisions. Percy becomes enraged with him, stating that even his own offspring would be more dependable. Percy's anger felt deeply understandable to me. He's a man observing his meticulously constructed expedition collapse, and it's difficult not to empathize. The circumstances worsen when they travel by raft. The water's force becomes intense and Percy commands Murray to remain motionless to maintain the raft balanced. However, Murray shifts carelessly, making one of the provision containers drop into the water. Their problems persist when the raft collides with a stone. Manly drops into the water and Percy instructs him to swim to the bank. Shortly following, Murray also drops into the water, but rather than swimming to protection, he grabs to the edge of the raft, angling it precariously. I said, "Release, you piggy." Manly succeeds in helping Murray to the bank, and they all stop to recuperate. Because of these incidents, they have sacrificed 2 provision containers, and Percy feels extremely furious with Murray for being so useless. Murray's state declines, and he keeps blaming Percy for everything that has occurred. Because of Murray's circumstances, the party's advancement slows, and after considering the situation thoroughly, they determine it is wisest to transport him back. Percy organizes for him to travel to a nearby prospector's settlement south of the water. He supplies Murray with provisions, their final remaining animal, and organizes for a native man to escort him. Percy clarifies that he cannot endanger Murray's failing health, threatening the protection of the party. Instead of expressing appreciation, Murray accuses Percy of not caring about him. "You don't give a whit about me or about any of the party." Once Murray departs, the party learns that their leftover provisions have been ruined by Murray before his exit. With no provisions remaining, they must discontinue their quest and return home. Though Percy encourages the group not to surrender so quickly, it becomes apparent that the leftover provisions won't survive for even 7 days, and he chooses to terminate the adventure. When Percy arrives home, he discovers that his spouse has delivered their 3rd offspring, a daughter named Joan. He feels thankful for his spouse, who has cared for their household so effectively in his absence. A few days following, Percy and the group attend a gathering at the Royal Geographical Society where Murray also appears. At the gathering, Murray accuses Percy of deserting him. Percy justifies his choice, explaining that he provided Murray adequate supplies to endure and had to make the decision that would maintain the party secure. Murray contends that the entire quest was unsuccessful because they invested too much effort with wild tribes and located no proof of the vanished settlement. Tsin interrupts, blaming Murray for the failure and accusing him of ruining the provisions. Murray claims that he bears no guilt and accuses Tsin and Manly of falsehood. Tsin becomes enraged, stating that they should have allowed Murray to perish in the jungle. The administrator intervenes to settle the circumstances. Murray insists that Percy openly acknowledge his errors before the entire organization and his spouse. Percy refuses, explaining that he did far more than required by supplying Murray with the animal and the additional provisions. He reminds everyone that he couldn't desert Murray, even though the remainder of the group desired him to. Despite his clarification, Murray continues insisting on an apology. "I insist on an apology right now. You will apologize to me." After the gathering, Percy withdraws from the organization. When he arrives home, his spouse notifies him that the previous officer has submitted his name to the War Office, which means Percy will shortly be summoned to duty in the military. His son Jack becomes furious, accusing Percy of constantly abandoning them. Jack notes that although Percy recently returned from his unsuccessful adventure, he already prepares to depart for combat. Percy attempts to clarify that defending his nation constitutes his obligation, but Jack questions whether Percy ever considers his household. What of your obligations to Mother and to us, your family? Overwhelmed with feeling, Percy strikes Jack in a moment of anger. His spouse comforts Jack and promises him that everything Percy accomplishes benefits their welfare. 2 years following, Percy serves on the battle lines with his troops. During this period, they receive information that Murray has enrolled in an Arctic venture with a Canadian group, but abandoned them. This proves to Percy and his crew that Murray lacks courage. One day, a fortune teller from Russia comes to their base. Everyone feels interested about what the fortune teller will reveal about Major Percy. The fortune teller informs him that the location he has been pursuing exceeds what he pictures. She states that his soul will not discover tranquility until he uncovers it, as it represents his fate. On September 26, 1916, Percy and his forces prepare for an offensive on the opposition. He motivates his crew to battle courageously for their households and companions. Regrettably, Percy receives a bullet during the charge. Although he endures, the injury damages his eye, and the physician informs him that while he will survive, resuming his adventures would prove too hazardous. I thought I had perished. You were subjected to chlorine vapor. Percy feels devastated, as locating the vanished settlement was the most significant aspiration of his existence. This is where I recognize Percy as the model of the sorrowful visionary wounded not merely in body but in essence. In 1923, Percy chose to withdraw from his military responsibilities. After his withdrawal, a reporter comes to him, explaining that many subscribers eagerly want to learn what Percy has been pursuing since the conclusion of the conflict. Percy informs the reporter that he now experiences an ordinary existence and thrives. The reporter also states that Percy's South American quest has profoundly motivated people in the United States, generating a surge of fascination in adventure. He mentions that Dr. Hamilton Rice prepares an expedition to Brazil with contemporary equipment like radios and aircraft. Many individuals have already registered for the expedition. Percy hears silently, conveying only his desire that these adventurers will honor and safeguard whatever they uncover. This statement affected me. I detect a more modest Percy here. Someone who maybe regrets how intensely he once desired to dominate the mysterious rather than honor it. Let us hope that Dr. Rice with all his arms does not obliterate what he wishes to uncover. One day, Jack practices his marksmanship by hunting rabbits. Percy approaches him and presents him a pendant he once obtained from the Green tribe. Jack questions his father if he still trusts in the vanished settlement. Percy doesn't respond with language, but simply gestures affirmatively. Jack then states he desires to accompany his father on an expedition to locate the vanished settlement. Percy, however, refuses, clarifying that he has grown too elderly for such a perilous quest. You and I together we could locate the settlement once and for all. Jack contends that they can't permit the Americans, who could obliterate the settlement with their armaments, dominate the pursuit. Jack's passionate conviction resembles his father's, but I couldn't help questioning if this represents history cycling again. Another generation pursuing a fantasy. He maintains that they should be the ones to locate the settlement initially and safeguard it. After considering for a while, Percy consents, but he states Jack must initially persuade his mother to permit him to leave. Jack speaks to his mother afterward and acknowledges that the quest presents danger, but he reminds her of the guidance she constantly provides about existing beyond one's security area. Hearing her own language turned back at her, Jack's mother feels cornered. You've just turned my very own words against me, and how can I dispute them? They are my own. She never anticipated having her own guidance turned against her. So, ultimately, she consents to permit Jack to leave with his father. Percy also summons his old companion Sin to accompany them. Sin declines, explaining he can't abandon his spouse and offspring behind, and he also cannot manage the expenses of the expedition. Percy begins to wonder if Sin no longer trusts in the vanished settlement. But, Constant clarifies that it's not the settlement he questions. He ponders if locating it will actually provide them all the solutions they desire. On December 3, 1924, Percy declares to the media that he would go back to the wilderness to pursue the vanished settlement of Z. This occasion with his eldest son, Jack. The Royal Geographical Society consents to help finance the expedition. The leader of the organization even apologizes for not believing Percy previously, particularly during the dispute with Murray. At the occasions, Percy displays the media a navigation tool he has preserved for 20 years, explaining it will serve as a representation of his quest. When we arrive at Z, I shall transmit it to you as evidence. Finally, the moment to depart comes. By April 1925, Percy and Jack reached in the Amazon rainforest. Percy indicates the view of an old estate, and they proceed walking until they arrive at a settlement belonging to a native tribe. The tribe inhabitants inform Percy about a concealed cavern that no foreigners know about. They also reference a massive stone decorated in pictures of people and animals, which they trust could be the gateway to the vanished settlement. Percy and Jack receive warm acceptance by the tribe's leader, and Percy senses that all humans connect through a shared origin. After relaxing in the settlement, Percy and Jack proceed with their quest. Deep in the jungle, they encounter a band of aggressive tribes and must flee. They ultimately locate another tribe that saves them and brings them to their community. The natives conduct ceremonies for them. During this period, Jack feels convinced that they will perish there. But Percy comforts him, explaining that the world holds mysteries, and even if they don't locate all the solutions, the quest itself has provided their existence's deeper significance. From that point on, they choose to obey whatever the tribe requests of them. Of life is a mystery, my boy. We understand so little of this world. Years pass, and Percy and Jack never come back. Percy's spouse visits the leader of the Royal Geographical Society, informing him that a Brazilian individual had stated to have witnessed Percy and Jack existing among the native tribes. The administrator recommends that she embrace the likelihood that they may never return. More than 100 individuals get deployed to pursue them, but none accomplish this. The Brazilian individual also provides her an item Percy had displayed before the expedition, the navigation tool. This causes her to question if Percy and Jack genuinely located the vanished settlement and selected to remain there. At the conclusion of the narrative, it's disclosed that for nearly 100 years, people ridiculed Percy's trust in the vanished settlement. I feel a conflicted victory here. It reminds me how trailblazers often get mocked in their lifetimes only to be proven right by later generations. However, in the early 20th century, scientists uncovered a remarkable system of ancient pathways, structures, and agricultural regions concealed in the Amazon jungle. Among these discoveries is the site Percy had pinpointed as the probable location of the vanished settlement of the lost city of Z.